few moments.
Hello, my name is Caleb Aurora, and I'm here to introduce you to Easy History Lessons. Easy History Lessons is a YouTube channel where you can learn everything about history. This is Professor Swift.
Hi there.
Professor Swift is a professor at Kaiser University with a master's degree in history. Today we will be discussing the Second Battle of Civil War. This is our first live stream, so please subscribe, like, and comment within the next 2 hours, and your comments will be featured on our next video.
Okay. Now, I think very good job, Caleb. I think you said Second Battle of the Civil War. I think you meant Second Battle of Bull Run.
Yes, I said Second Battle of Bull Run.
Okay. Well, I think the last time you said Civil War, but maybe not. But anyway, Second Battle of Bull Run, a very important major battle of the Civil War. But before we do the Second Battle of Bull Run, you might notice, if you glanced at our Civil War key battles and campaigns doc, that I list the capture of New Orleans. Now, that was not a major battle. In fact, it wasn't really much of a battle at all. The Union seized New Orleans without even firing a shot. But I listed on my key battles and campaigns because it was very, very important. This was a significant achievement by the Union military. Not because it was made so difficult for them. It was actually incredibly easy. There really wasn't even a shot fired. Why do I say it's so significant? Because New Orleans was the largest city in the Confederacy. It was also the largest industrial city in the Confederacy. It was also its largest port. So if you had the largest city, the largest industrial center, and the largest port, and you were struggling for your survival, I would think that you would defend it. They didn't do that. In fact, this is another sign of strategic weakness on the part of the Confederacy. We've seen that beginning with the Battle of Shiloh, right from the very beginning, the Union forces get off to a good start on the Western Front, as opposed to the Eastern Front. And that's because the Confederacy ignores the Western theater. But the Confederacy also ignores its port cities. And we're going to see this throughout the 4 years of the conflict, this repeated, you could say, lack of concern for what were truly strategically important sites. Again, the Confederacy is betting pretty much all their chips, so to speak, on the Eastern Theater. They know that that is the center ring of the three-ring circus. But in retrospect, it's quite easy to see that that was a mistake. That should have been more apparent to the Confederate leadership at the time. Now, Second Battle of Bull Run, fought on almost exactly the same battlefield as the First Battle of Bull Run. Circumstances are a little different. The armies are larger. In fact, the battle is the first time in which the first time on the Eastern Theater, it's the first time that the Confederates actually initiate the hostilities. In other words, instead of waiting for the Union to launch a strike and then implementing a counterstrike, the Confederacy goes ahead and launches the initial strike here in this battle. This shows that the Confederacy is getting a little bolder. It also shows that they're gaining confidence in their ability to defeat Union armies in the field, even when those Union armies are larger and more heavily gunned. So what happens at the Second Battle of Bull Run is, first of all, the commander of the Union forces, McClellan, who, if you remember, just got his tail kicked in the Peninsula campaign. Well, he is off in pursuit of a Confederate force with a smaller contingent of the army, and he's not there when Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia strike at Bull Run. Now, whether or not this was part of the plan, in other words, to strike when the senior commander wasn't there, is debated among historians. There's no real proof either way. But the fellow in charge of the Union Army of the Potomac at this point, who's been kind of left behind with the bulk of the forces, is a General Pope, and he's going to be a one-hit wonder. In other words, after this battle, kind of just like McDowell in that first Bull Run, he is going to be given a desk job. Not entirely, but he's not going to be at the center of attention. So Lee launches a strike at Second Bull Run, and Second Bull Run once again is an interesting battle in that the Confederate military command is able to carry out a number of maneuvers that are just beyond the reach, so to speak, of that of the Union. Now, I wanted to take a peek at my document for a second, if I can do that. I want to give you a couple little statistics that I think you will find interesting. First thing I wanted to point out here is, let's see. Well, maybe I'm not going to be able to bring up the doc quite as quickly as I wanted to. So, oh, let's see. You know what? Would you pause it for a second, Caleb?
I can't pause this, but
you can't? Okay.
But I can do. But I can do. But I can add a small. But I can try to do something.
Okay. Well, let's see.
While Professor Swift is getting his document.
Well, actually, oh no, go ahead, Caleb. Go ahead.
While Professor Swift is getting his document, I would just like to give a shout out to those who have helped make this channel possible. Justina Aurora, if you are listening to this video, you made this video you made this video possible. Thanks, Mom. And Hamendra Aurora, thanks for the new computer. I wouldn't have any other way to stream without it. Now, other than that, we're now off. Easy History t-shirts will be available at young4young.net. Thank you.
Very good job there, Caleb.
I'm trying to do a tiny bit of advertising
here, that's good.
Even though I'm not in the YouTube monetization program. I have absolutely no rights to use YouTube's built-in monetization. You know, like I'm not allowed to add ads that simply interrupt the video. I'm not allowed to use Super Chat, which is for adult channels only.
Okay. All right. Well, let me carry on here. Back to the Second Battle. I had a couple little statistics I wanted to bring up. The Union Army at this point, and by the way, it's called the Union Army of Virginia. It hasn't been fully integrated into the name of the Union Army of the Potomac. It has different segments. That's a technical matter. But the point here is the Union Army in this battle is 77,000 troops. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was approximately 50,000 troops, so a pretty substantial advantage by the Union. And yet this battle is quite decisive in that the Army of Northern Virginia is very quickly able to achieve a victory here. And I mentioned that there were a couple of maneuvers that were made. One is of particular note. The Army Corps, the Confederacy, that was commanded by James Longstreet in Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, carried out a simultaneous attack of 25,000 troops. Well, that's the largest simultaneous attack by a U.S. Army in history to that point, and wouldn't be achieved again until World War I. So the ability to have 25,000 troops striking all at once as part of a cohesive plan was quite extraordinary. The other Corps commander, Jackson, also he also performed quite admirably at this battle as well. So the Confederates are getting a little more aggressive. They didn't wait this time for the Union to deliver the first blow. They went ahead and delivered the first blow. And this battle has so emboldened General Lee that he's going to engage in a change in strategy. He has to get permission to do so, and he will get that permission. But what I'm talking about here is that General Lee decides he is going to invade the North. And he gets permission from President Davis. That's Jefferson Davis, Confederate president. Their only Confederate president. And the way he's able to get permission is that he cites three reasons for this offensive. One is, and these are prioritized, but they're prioritized by me. The first reason he wants to invade the North is he wants to create, you could say, fear and panic in the North. He wants people to think, oh my gosh, there's a rebel army in Pennsylvania. How did that happen? And by the way, the objective is to get to Pennsylvania. We'll talk about why that is in a minute. And Lee's term is war weariness. He wants the people of the North to develop a sense of war weariness. In other words, they get to the point where they're simply going to throw in the towel. And he thinks this will possibly be the trick that does that by defeating a Northern army, a Union army on Northern soil. The second reason is that the Confederates are holding out for British recognition. They hope that if they receive diplomatic recognition from the UK, that will make it much more likely for the UK to intervene in this war militarily. Now, let me mention something. The UK, of course, is the world's leading power at this point, world's leading economic, political, and military power. But the major part of the British economy, which has been in the middle of an industrial revolution for some 80 years to this point, at the heart and soul of the British Industrial Revolution is the textile industry, and it is heavily dependent on cheap cotton primarily from the United States. And the Confederate government has made a decision to embargo cotton, to not sell cotton to the United Kingdom, thinking they can bring the British Empire to its knees. Now, about 1 in every 6 individuals in the UK was employed in the textile industry. So they were banking that for sure this would entice the British into coming in on their side. Didn't work. But the Confederacy is still hoping that as the war drags on, the British are at some point going to become more desperate for Southern cotton. Now, that never happens for several reasons. First of all, the British anticipated that there very well might be a civil war in the U.S., and they bought a bumper crop in 1859, 1860, more than they really needed. But they also, in the late 1850s, began to grow cotton in India and Egypt. They did not want to be vulnerable to, you could say, foreign sources of cotton. Kind of like we talked today about oil and other resources. The British recognized that they had to have their own domestic sources. And I say domestic because India and Egypt as well were within the control of the British Empire at that time. So Lee is hoping, in addition to creating this war weariness or fear and panic, whatever you want to call it, that he can gain for the Confederacy diplomatic recognition, which ultimately will mean, they hope, military intervention. I'll tell you another reason why, though, the British government was never going to come in on the side of the Confederacy. By this time, they had basically become the face of the world's abolitionist movement. The Royal Navy, in fact, was confiscating slave ships, arresting the crew, captain and crew, releasing slaves to on board on these slave ships to freedom. It politically, socially would have been really impossible. And in fact, most of the major labor union leaders in Britain had made it clear that it would not be tolerated by the working class if the British government intervened on the side of the Confederacy. Now, it is true that men, no women at all, but men of working class status could not vote in the UK, but as one of the major union leaders in the UK said at the time, we can still throw bricks. So in other words, there was a threat of physical violence in the streets by workers if the British government decided that it would take the easy way out and end what had become an economic downturn. I mean, I don't want to minimize the fact that the British economy was still impacted by the cotton shortage. But again, that was mostly offset by what I told you before about growing cotton and Indian cotton, purchasing the bumper crop. So it really that wasn't really likely. Now, third, there was another, you could say, more tactical kind of reason. The farms in Northern Virginia and the Carolinas were exhausted, and they were the primary source of food for the Army of Northern Virginia. So they were running out of food at this point, and they were running out of horses. Pennsylvania at that time was known as the breadbasket of the United States. And I don't know if you've ever driven through Pennsylvania, but it's some of the most plush farmland you'll ever see. The soil is amazing. And Lee was hoping to replenish his stocks, if you will, with fresh horses and wheat, corn, whatever they needed. So they were going to target the breadbasket of Pennsylvania, again, they other than that, they never had the idea they were going to try to conquer the North or large sections of territory. That was just not part of the plan. But they had a very specific plan. It was, you could say, a threefold objective here, and they got off to what they thought was a fairly good start. They moved into Maryland. It appeared that they had slipped by any federal forces. But then all of a sudden, one of the most hard to imagine events happened to the whole Civil War. General Lee's battle plans fell into the hands of the Union. The way that happened is that a courier, someone who was transporting General Lee's battle plans, had decided to stop and have a cup of coffee and a cigar before moving on. And when he did that, he unwrapped a cigar that he had forgotten that he had wrapped Lee's battle orders inside the wrapper of the cigar, and the orders fell to the ground and he didn't notice it. And within an hour after doing so, the cavalry officer, Union cavalry officer scouting for the Confederate forces, came across the orders, handed those, not personally, but to his seniors, and they were in the hands of General McClellan within just a few hours. This allowed McClellan to set up an ambush. Lee's army had to divide into three different formations because they were foraging. They were beyond their supply lines as they were invading the North. And so they had to live off the land. And they were spread out. So they weren't in a position to engage the enemy. They needed time. And they ended up stumbling into a trap. But miraculously, General Lee was able to gather his forces together and engage the Union forces before the Union forces all consolidated. This was a major blunder by McClellan. I mean, McClellan was handed on a silver platter, you could say, the opportunity to deliver a crushing blow to the Army of Northern Virginia, and who knows, maybe even end the war. But that didn't happen. And Lee was able to fight the Union Army to a standstill and withdraw his force safely back to Virginia. So strategically, this is a defeat for the Confederacy because their objective was to get to Pennsylvania and seize the horses and win a battle on northern soil. And it didn't happen. But tactically, it was basically a draw. And this battle would be known as the Battle of Antietam. Now, Antietam was the bloodiest single day of the Civil War, some 23,000 casualties on both sides, killed and wounded. It remains to this day the bloodiest day in the history of the U.S. military. To put that in perspective, we had some 3,800 casualties at D-Day on the first day. So this was some 6 times the carnage that was suffered at D-Day. Antietam is very important because, first of all, the Confederate offensive is a failure, so that's obviously very important. If they had been successful, one of those what ifs of history, maybe there would have been more of a sense of war weariness in the North. Maybe a replenished Southern army that could have held out longer than they did. Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs. But the important thing is that Lincoln decided that this strategic victory, even if it was a tactical draw, the strategic victory by the Union forces was the opportunity to take the war to a higher moral plane. The war had always been a war to preserve the Union. Lincoln realized from the beginning that had to be the primary objective. But now he is going to make this also a war of liberation. So President Lincoln will issue the Emancipation Proclamation, which will be our next video. And so we will see you soon.
And?
Yeah.
Okay, so so thank you for watching our video. I have an announcement though. Comments, due to new YouTube policies, comments are turned off. However, you can still comment by reaching us out at easy.history.lessons@gmail.com, which we'll be putting in the link. See you soon. Goodbye.
Very good. Very good.